took action.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they passed an ordinance and sent it to the planning commission, so now they've got an ordinance to review or do nothing with.
It'll be back on their lap last.
Yep, it's a big old boomerang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least it's not as hot as the Doughboy was.
Yeah.
What do you mean was? This is still a very big issue. Oh. Now we're popping up in people's notifications. Right.
All right, I'm picking Dicken. We're live. I think I actually shared it right today.
Did you?
Kind of. Yeah, I did it right. For the first time, and I don't even know how long I actually shared it properly.
So does it go live on YouTube, too?
No, we have to pick.
Uh-huh.
We don't pay extra for like a third-party service to send it out to all the platforms. So we can go live on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope if somebody still use Periscope. So our biggest following is on Facebook. So we just stick it live on Facebook.
They're using
So,
Periscope.
so for the government, where you don't want people to watch it, Periscope is your place.
Yeah, we make everything available in Periscope.
That's what. If they're using Periscope, they're using Foursquare.
We're trying to hide it. All right, we all ready? We feel good?
Heck yeah.
Good enough? Welcome to the Bouslog Liberty podcast on the We Are Libertarians Network, or the Wall Network. Made fun of that earlier today. Darren, not Darren, said Darren already. Aaron Dicken over here in the corner, one of our guests, he said, it's the We Are Libertarians Network. I said, it's because the We Are Democrats Network never contacted us. We didn't have a shot at it. So we're on the We Are Libertarians Network, the Wall Network, Wall Local. I'm your host, Jeremiah Morrill, and as always, I'm joined by our co-host, Dakota Davis.
Hey, how's it going, Jeremiah?
Oh, it's been a mess already. I'm struggling.
Yep.
Before we even started, I drank one beer, and I'm on my second one. So, yeah, I'm trying to. I got through the beer I brought, and now the guest who won't admit he's drinking a beer, he he gave me one too. So we're trying to play equal favorites here.
Which one is that? I don't see Mr. Bouslog over here with a cup.
Yeah, he's got something under the table. I don't know.
It's called water.
Our show is about our lives in rural Indiana. It's a show. This is a show about folks who are involved in politics. Hey, we actually have that today. We promise that our episodes are going to be a fun and an easy listen. We interview people who are influencers, elected officials, political experts, and folks we just find interesting. We got a bunch of politicians in the room, and we're not talking politics today, Dakota.
I know, it's really weird. We're going to talk a little bit about politics. I can't have Aaron Dicken in the room and not talk about politics.
Not rake me over the coal for grass.
Yeah, I already told you. See, if I seem a little exhausted during this episode, it's because I had to mow before Aaron got here. Because I did have some grass that I went out and measured. It was about 8 inches.
Well,
you mow maximum freedom in your grass.
You mow shorter.
Measured in kilos.
As a guy of your age, Dick, I would think that maybe you'd be okay with that as a Democrat. You'd be,
I think
it'd be fine.
Grass is to be mown. That's it.
That's all you can do with it.
That's all you can do with grass.
So official introductions. We've got Dick Bouslog here, who is a current county councilman in Henry County and a retired educator. You taught at a couple of different schools here in Newcastle. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And then on the other side, we have a retired educator.
For different reasons.
And current city councilman, it's Aaron Dicken. It's his return appearance on the show. Mm-hmm. So we welcome both of them. So the main purpose of this show today is we're gonna have some conversation and some fun, but we're gonna talk about a Newcastle, Indiana zone, Bob Indiana, who is an artist born here, and he just recently passed away. Last month he passed away, and these guys made a trip up to not to Vermont. I don't know if you went through Vermont to get there, but you made a trip to Maine.
We missed Vermont.
Nope. You guys didn't stop and see old.
Weren't feeling it.
Weren't feeling it.
Well, didn't feel the burn. So we're going to talk to him about that as we get into the episode a little bit. But we normally just bounce back and forth, weekend stuff, and what's going on in our lives, and wait on people to join us in the live stream. You're listening on iTunes. There is a live stream available. If you go out to Facebook or YouTube, you can see some of the stuff that we have. We're talking about an artist today, so Aaron brought some props. So there's going to be some props and videos that you can check out over there. Dakota, what'd you do this weekend, man? This week.
This week? Well, I worked until 11 p.m. on Tuesday, so there hasn't been a lot that I've done this week. I've been, man, we keep getting hit by these little random storms that just do nothing but cause ruckus in my life.
You're just printing money in overtime, though.
It's
good for the studio budget.
Call it that. Yeah, good for the studio. Yeah, that's right. How do you think we got that really pristine, $40 backpack over there.
Is that Bouslog Liberty property?
Yeah, that's Bouslog property.
We need to get that embroidered, man.
Yeah.
It looks like a hunting backpack. It's green.
See,
It's
I
like
can't see
it's
it.
like
Well,
Digital camouflage.
it's a digital camo, exactly.
yeah, well, they had a black one, and the camouflage one was the only one that was on sale. It was
You sound like a Democrat.
He's
Sounds like a
thrifty.
libertarian to me.
the black one was $75. That one was $40. So.
All right.
Yeah.
What are we doing with that? Are we carrying our microphones
man,
and our
it's-
H6 around in it? Is that
We
our
can-
mobile studio?
Yeah, it's our whole mobile studio. It's got a place for the Mevo, got straps on the side for the tripod, places for the microphones. It's even got little individual SD card pockets and places for batteries. It's seriously like the Cadillac of backpacks.
Should have had that last night at the county commissioners meeting. It was
Yeah.
There were fireworks.
I feel like
It
I
was
said that
exciting.
exact same thing as a fourth grader.
The Cadillac of backpacks.
Cadillac of
Yeah.
Maybe if things go well, we can get a lunchbox next week.
Maybe. I want a tin one though. I want a metal lunchbox that's got the Doughboy on it.
So you broke your phone over the weekend.
I did.
So you had to go to Richmond to the Best Buy for repair, or across the road to some little cell phone shop.
Yeah, it's called You Break I Fix. That's the name of the shop. So, and it's all one word. It's not separate words. It's all lowercase, one word. And I was expecting it to be kind of a pretty shady place, but I walked in there and it was like walking into the Google offices where there's beanbag chairs and it's all very postmodern architecture. And I was like, wow, this is like, you guys just replaced phone screens and you can afford a building like this.
They might sell some stuff out the back door too. I don't know if you hung around long
Could
enough to
be.
ask questions.
Measured in kilos.
That's
right.
Moon grass.
That's right. Yeah, so I went across the street to the Best Buy. I'm moseying around, looking at things. I originally went in there to look for a tempered glass screen protector for my phone, so I didn't have to make the trip back to Richmond again. Let me tell you guys, spending your entire adult life with a cell phone, with a smartphone, and then you drop it off at a location in an unfamiliar town, and you don't have it for 2.5 hours. It's like, what? How did people survive?
You don't carry a backup phone just in case?
Yeah, you have 2 phones over here. No, I was like, I don't even know I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I went to Best Buy to look for things. I saw the backpack. I really liked it. I went up to a sales associate and I said, hey, I'm looking for a headphone amp. You know what we can use to hear ourselves in the headphones with. And he starts asking me questions and starts asking me about the setup. He's like, you in a studio? I was like, yeah. And he's like, are you using this for bands or anything? And do you have a band? No, I'm in a studio. And he's like, you run it through a mixer first? I said, yeah. And he goes, are you a podcaster too?
Yeah, and ours is way more successful than yours, and I haven't even met
Yeah.
you.
Well, he didn't even tell me the name of his. I gave him a business card. So who's doing the better job here?
Marketing.
Yeah, we know no bounds in shameless self-promotion on this show. We have no shame.
So he did point me in the right direction for one. It's $140. So that's what our Patreon money is going to be going to. So if you want to support us on Patreon so that we can keep upgrading our equipment, it's patreon.com/BossHogOfLiberty. We have all kinds of really cool stuff. We did the bonus episode tinfoil time this week. My wife and I do that every week, and it was the conspiracy theory that we did this week was there are no forests on Earth, which is really interesting.
We have Trojan Woods just up the street. You're not allowed to go in it, but we
did
have it.
have Trojan Woods.
Until people started destroying it with their bicycles.
And their feet.
Yeah. But that episode last night that we did was probably my favorite episode that we've done.
All right. I have not listened to it yet.
It was a good one.
I had a somewhat busy day trying to sell steel during the day job, but
Yeah.
I promise to goof off tomorrow and listen to your bonus podcast.
Is it non-tariffed?
Non-tariffed? It's domestic. So yeah, we're
Good.
for now.
You're within the border.
We're within the border. The big one today was I was working on a job in the Cincinnati airport, which is conveniently in Kentucky. So go figure.
It's almost like,
But like the
1,500
street
miles.
mart, yeah, I could never.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
poor Dick shows up here all out of breath, and he's got a bad back anyway today, and he parked. We're on a lettered street somewhere north of Q Avenue, and the numbers are not anywhere close to what they would be on any logical map. And Dick is going to show up at the next Monday county council meeting and petition the city to renumber the streets because it makes no sense at all. Answer for your actions, Aaron. What is going on?
I'm adding that to my platform.
Very good. I've only lived here 70 years. And
Well, Dick, the only reason that Aaron knew where this place was is because he personally patrols my grass and makes
True.
sure that I'm not blowing it into the street, make sure it's short enough.
It's impressive. You went from like 4 1/4 to 2 1/4 like, overnight.
He brought his measuring tape out and
Yeah.
checked it.
Yep. He does it. I mean, I will give Aaron credit. He's going out there himself. He's doing the dirty work himself and measuring the grass, making sure people are not exceeding their freedom limits.
Yeah.
You know,
Just like Barney Fife.
Yep.
Citizen's arrest.
Where's your bullet in your pocket there? You're just wearing a T-shirt.
I have one
Fell
that
out.
I have one I fiddle with over here. That
Borrow that.
it's a live round.
yeah. Yeah, I want to keep Aaron on his toes, man.
You've got a live round with all these public officials around.
Mhm.
That's a hate crime, man. That's
A
dangerous.
hate crime. Well, I'll take it out whenever President Trump comes to the show.
Yeah. We're holding our breath. We're still waiting on the vice president's brother to swing by, so
Yeah,
we'll see if
yeah,
the president
that's not
comes
gonna. Yeah.
in. All right. So you have in the notes here that I went to the commissioners meeting last night. I did. I visited the Henry County Commissioners meeting. This week was crazy, as always. I did in 2 nights. I did 5 meetings. I did Friends of Memorial Park. I did the Henry County 4-H Junior Leaders. I went to the White Estates. Aaron's going to raise my taxes to make sure my sewage works, even though the mayor said the other day that where I live I have good flow. But whatever. I'm inside the yellow box, so I'm going to get taxed. And then the next day, I went to the 4-H Junior Leader meeting and the Henry County Commissioners meeting. Yeah. And there were more today, but we did the podcast.
Yeah, we thought about taking the camera and stuff, but yesterday was the only free day I had all week, and this weekend. So I was like,
And you had to
and-
record. You had to do
yeah,
your
and we
Tuesday
had to
show.
do
You couldn't do.
tinfoil time. So I was just, tinfoil time sounds like a lot more fun than listening to people argue about the comprehensive plan for the county.
So the county.
No offense. No offense.
No offense taken.
The county approved the comprehensive plan finally last night. The commissioners signed off on that. There was no real debate or anything. That one went pretty quick. And then they've been working on the WEX ordinance. We've been following that story through all the primaries and had a number of candidates come through, and the commissioners' candidates. They've had a marked up ordinance that went through. It wasn't really read. There's a copy of it posted on the county website now. Now that it's been, I guess it's like a first reading, it's been approved by the commissioners. It will go to the planning commission that will take action or not take action. It's weird how that works, Dick. It'll get sent down there and they'll have hearings and then they'll do something or they won't do something and then it'll come boomerang back to the commissioners. And then I would imagine some point in the next 3 to 4 months we'll have resolution or we won't have resolution on the wind topic.
So the
Won't be
inside
in my lifetime.
inside of the WEX ordinance, one big thing that I saw was that the allowable limit for height of the windmills is going to be shorter than what we all originally thought.
It's 500 feet. I'm not sure what the other proposals have been, but I'd always heard people saying it was going to be close to the Chase Tower. I looked at the Chase Tower today because it was like the Salesforce Tower now. It's been around so long that I think the tower's been renamed 3 times since this project started. It might have been the Bank One
Deer
Tower when this
Creek.
came about. Yeah. But the Salesforce Tower is 811 feet tall. If these do come through, the top maximum ordinance height is 500 feet.
How tall is the Shenandoah one?
I think maybe in the 300 range. I don't know. I've yet. You've got the measuring tape, man. You used it in Dakota's yard. We'll just.
I'm not that tall.
I'll put you on my shoulders and we'll go out there and check
There
it.
we go.
He only has to have an 8-inch
Giants of our
ruler.
own mind.
He only has
true.
to have an 8-inch ruler, and if it reaches
It's really
the top,
just a stick, a twig.
yeah.
Oh man, Travis Ham is
Citation
in the
book.
chat and he says he fixed Aaron Dickens.
It's
song.
true. It's
So-
true.
And then he said #repair local. Listen, Travis, I'm sorry, but I had to go to the place that was Google certified. That was my reasoning.
You're
And
walking around
the
with that
closest
$1,200
one,
Google phone.
yeah, the closest one was in Richmond, and I had to go. But then I talked to the guy in Richmond. I'm like, how do you do this? But I'm constantly curious. I'm a curious individual, so I asked him.
It is Pride Month.
And he said, it's actually really easy. Pretty much, the Google phone, that is. He's like, the Google phone is actually like super easy. We just like flip it open like a book, and you unplug 2 little cords, and then you stick it back down and use the heat gun to seal it back up. was
So
like,
now you don't have to pay to have that done ever again
And
because
I-
you stole
and
his
then I
secrets.
thought, and that took you 2.5 hours.
I'm just saying, I dropped my phone off with Travis. Didn't even miss it. I knew it was in good hands.
Yeah.
You didn't have the fidgets?
Nope.
You weren't
Didn't
missing
have the
it?
fidgets because
Do you have an iPad?
I could remember my Razor phone, which I know I'm saying this in front of Dick, who had the cord phone, right?
Meaning what?
The cord phone. That's all I'm saying.
We used to have shared lines.
So I got
Landlines,
I
shared.
got so bored that I went to the parking lot of Big Lots, and I got out my game
You buy some
clean-
sunglasses?
No, I got out my game cleaning kit, the things I use to clean the animals that I kill, and then
Started looking for roadkill in the Big Lot parking lot?
no, and then
Something
I
in the
got
cooler?
and then I got out 2 basketballs, or not basketballs, but golf balls, and I just started playing with them. Just started cutting them up, and I peeled one like an apple spiral. It was a pretty good testament to the quality of my knives and how sharp they were. I was impressed, and thankfully I did have cut-resistant gloves in my truck too. So
Man, should have live streamed that.
I should have.
Yeah. Can you imagine
have
the
your-
clicks
you didn't have
passed
your
out
phone.
on?
See,
Yeah.
That's your generation. I would have been looking to work acts of kindness for people in the vicinity.
Oh man.
Oh,
Just passing out $100 bills like a retiree.
Okay.
fixed income,
But-
Jeremiah.
I
$20 bills.
there is one act of kindness. I wasn't going to bring it up because I don't like to brag on myself. But
But here we go.
there was a lady whenever I was getting gas that stopped by my truck and asked if I had 75 cents, and I gave it to her.
Nice.
Did
I
she
have-
need to make 3 phone calls?
I don't know.
3
there-
shopping
there was the
carts at
payphone that
Aldi.
was like right across from right there in the parking lot, and I was like, oh, she's gonna have to make a phone call, and then she just walked right past it. So I don't know what the 75 cents was for. I don't know why it was such a odd low amount. I mean, if you're just gonna be asking for money, I would be,
Quite the shakedown number. I don't know.
yeah, got $75. She had dollars mixed with cents, is what I'm thinking.
I'm waiting for the Democrat joke. 'Cause
Yeah, you would have just taken other people's money, right?
let me get this money over here.
Aaron saw her first and said, "Take Dakota's money. He's got it."
Yeah.
That's where your Democrat
This guy
joke.
over here
Oh,
can
yeah.
help you.
There we go.
All right. You guys want to talk some Robert, Indiana?
Yeah, let's
Sure.
do it. Let's talk about our topic today.
All right. So the reason that these guys, Dick and Aaron, are here, you guys made a trip, and it was I didn't realize it was going on. I don't know, Aaron, were you still at what career? You've had like 5 different jobs in the last 2 years.
Oh, thanks.
Hey, job hopper.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's right. They've all been step ups.
Yeah, I'm just giving you a hard time.
Um,
Were you working with the Art Association at the time?
Yeah, I was the director at the art center at that point.
Are you an artist as well?
I'm not,
Oh, Aaron.
but not an artist in the artist
Musical
sense of
artist.
the word. We're all artists, Dakota.
We're podcasters. We are in
That is an art.
We are in. We have an
Definitely.
appreciation, and we're in the arts
You have
community.
to have an amp for your
They accept
headphones.
us.
You are an artist.
we
but
just talk in the same tone over and over and over again. But we're
Yep.
artsy.
yeah.
I guess
Anyway.
you could call it that.
Whatever.
So I was a director at the art center, and I had before that time had remembered going to the IMA with my wife, and at that point they had a room dedicated to Robert, Indiana, and it was Robert Clark. So I saw that Robert Clark associated with Newcastle on something there, and came home and asked my dad about it. And so then one of the things I wanted to do when I was the director was make that connection. And I was too ignorant to know how big of a feat that was going to be, which was kind of nice, actually.
You've come a long way. Like in the time you were there, I read the newspaper every day, so whether or not we're talking and friends at that point, I was aware of the work you were doing. So I don't know what street it is. Of course, it's Newcastle, so it could be 47th Street for all I know.
That's true.
31st as far as we go.
I guess is that I don't know.
15th Street.
15th Street. Okay, yeah. So yeah, because you've had 14th Street closed for 3 years now.
Right,
now I
we
remember.
don't even include that.
It's open now.
We've taken
man.
it off the maps. So 15th Street is runs from Broad Street, our main highway, 38, all the way across to, I guess, Indiana Avenue and points beyond, all the way to the Armory.
A
I guess.
Avenue.
A Avenue.
And it
Down-
actually
down to
goes
the letter
north,
streets.
too.
Yeah, to the hook.
Yeah.
We don't send anybody over that side of town. If you want to find meth in the street, that's where you
That's
go.
terrible.
Oh. Oh.
Oh, I'm the bad guy. Anyway, so that's been renamed Robert Indiana Parkway, and there were some big
Right.
signs that were put up, and you've had there was some painting in the crosswalks in all along that area. There's some public art displays that have gone in, and that's where the Art Association headquarters is.
Right, and that was kind of the idea. I knew that renaming the street completely was going to be a terrible idea, and even trying to stress that it was going to be an honorary name, I think raised some eyebrows from like the library and some other people there that thought they would have to redo a lot of their marketing. But it's an honorary, it's just an additional street sign showing it's in honor of Robert, Indiana. And for us, it made sense because the Art Association's on that street, library's on that street, and really it's the backyard of the Historical Society too. So you can get to the Historical Society there. And now having the Love sculpture there outside of the Armory, it's just a really nice
You've got
section.
2 Love sculptures
on 15th Street.
That's
Plaza.
true.
Yeah,
That's
true.
In that area.
And Vanderwall kind of took that and ran with it and made it the Robert, Indiana Arts and Culture District. And Newcastle Main Street has been a huge proponent of making that fill out a little bit with the sculpture at the Armory. Sculptures at the Armory, that's the one thing I had forgotten. They've added a couple other Robert, Indiana themed sculptures there. And there's some paintings along the way, and then connecting it to the Art Association.
So, Dick, tell us about Robert, Indiana, who he was, what the connection is with Newcastle, I guess. Start there for us.
Before I do that, Mary Beth Taylor gave me sometime last year an old News Republic in 1978, maybe June. And whoever the writer was, Marnie someone, had gone to the retrospective in Indianapolis in 78 at the IMA, Indianapolis Museum of Art, and talked to Robert, Indiana. And his first comment was, I was afraid someone from Newcastle would find me. Anyway, but she interviewed him, and this is where Aaron comes in. And I have nothing but praise for Aaron for the work he did. And that's not a joke. Anyway.
Need a rim shot over here somewhere.
She said, you were born in Newcastle? He said, they say I was. And then he goes on to say that, she said, have you tried to make contact with anyone? He says, I don't know anyone in Newcastle. I have no doors to knock on. He said, the only place I know in Newcastle is the courthouse lawn. He said, I've been there. I was there 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. So anyway, that's the only association he had with Newcastle. But he did say, he said, I'm waiting on someone to contact me. And so that was in 78, and in in 2015, Aaron starts knocking on his door, and one day he opened, and Aaron gave me that call, and he said, Mr. Bouslog, are you sitting down? I said, no. He said, sit down. And he told me that he'd made contact and that we were going east.
Well,
but Aaron,
I have
it's
to
Aaron's
say,
persistence.
Well, but I have to say, and obviously when we were in that first room at the Star of Hope, there's a thick binder. It was labeled Newcastle, Henry County, and because I think our eyes were glazed over, neither of us picked it up. But there's a particular person out there that'll let you know that, I mean, Ruth Hayworth had done some groundwork. Mr. John Dickey, when we had the show at the Art Center, brought a note that he had received from Robert, Indiana. So I'm not anywhere close to the first person to reaching out to him, and I could never tell you why we finally got that back. I'd imagine it's because he knew he was towards the end of his life and wanted to come around full circle. But I mean, there's so many people in our community that had laid that groundwork, I think. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, this guy's the encyclopedia for sure.
And Aaron carried the ball over the goal line, and it was a touchdown. We were well received, and everything you'd read about Robert, he was cantankerous, he was moody, he would stiff people like the President of the United States, like the Today Show. For 3 days, they were stiffed on the island, couldn't talk to him. But we got in, and again, it was Aaron Dicken that did it. He was the guy that got the door open.
That's awesome.
So let's learn about his background a little bit, and then lead up to, if we can, up to his trip, your trip that you took up there.
Like I said, this guy, I mean, Mr. Bouslog, and I call him Mr. Bouslog because he was my elementary school principal.
He spent a lot of time in the office.
That's right. That's right.
All good for
good stuff.
No, he's a good kid.
It's for good stuff. I mean, literally knows almost everything there is to know. So I'm just going to sit back.
So what do you want to know again?
So I guess he was born in Newcastle, but didn't live here long, didn't go to school here.
No, he was here just for a short period of time, maybe an hour or two. Went to Richmond, and he was living with friends of his biological mother, and for about 6 months, and then he was adopted by Earl and Carmen Clark from Indianapolis. And that's where he grew up, Indianapolis, until he graduated from Arsenal Tech High School. But he said, if you could use one word to describe his life, one word would be struggle. And his adoptive parents loved him. There's no doubt about that. Though love was never used in the home. It was hug. Give me a hug. I love you, son. Give me a hug. But he grew up just like most little kids. He had toys to play with, and they made sure he had materials to write and draw with. His father worked for an oil company, and later he worked with Phillips 66. And that plays really big into Bobby's life. Bobby, like I know Bobby. Bobby's life, little Bobby's life.
You're basically best friends.
Yeah, but this was in the late 20s, early 30s. But every day they would go to his dad's workplace in Midtown Indianapolis, Phillips 66, and he'd look up in the sky, and there's this beautiful red and green Phillips 66 sign with all this nice gardening work below it, beautiful blue sky above it. And that was kind of ingrained in his mind, this, just going to see Dad, and he was impressed with that sign, and other things, of course. But eventually he was of school age, and he was too ill to start first grade, so they moved to Mooresville, Indiana. Now, that's also the hometown of John Dillinger. You guys know who John Dillinger is?
I do.
Bank robber.
Okay.
Mooresville
Also a bus driver for the Newcastle school system, but not the same one.
Yeah.
Not the same John.
Mooresville, that's the hometown of my bride to be, the lovely Sarah Potter. And that's where the Indiana state flag was designed. I don't know if you know
Really?
that.
I
That's
didn't know that.
the birthplace of the Indiana state flag is
Wow.
Mooresville. So yeah, I'm familiar with Mooresville.
Okay. But anyway, so he starts his education in the first grade at Mooresville. His teacher's name's Mrs. Ruth she was Miss then, Miss Ruth Kaufman, and had a wonderful year. But he would bring in his artwork and give it to her and share it with her. And at the end of the year, she said, "Bobby, would you mind if I kept some of your artwork? I know that someday you're going to be a great artist." And that set with him. And he knew at that point that was his destiny. His parents had mentioned about being an artist, and his parents said, artists live in attics and eat bean soup. And not too many years ago in an interview, he said, I have an attic, 4th floor, I love it. I love to be up there, and I love bean soup. But that was probably his first inspiration was from his teacher, who he later met several years ago. He came back home, looked her up, and she was older then and married. And she said, cup of coffee, sure. And she said, just a minute, I'm going to get something. And she went into the bedroom and brought some of his artwork out and said, would you sign these with your new name? Instead of Bobby Clark, it's Robert Indiana. And so, and then he invited her later to New York, and she got to go see his world in New York.
Oh, that's really cool.
And those 3 images, and I'll give the website to my blog, in his studio on the bottom floor of his house, those 3, he still has those 3 pictures, and he's blown them up to about, 4 foot by 5 foot. It's impressive.
Yeah, the picture that John Dickey, he alluded to Dr. Dickey, that Bob had signed was an old 1st grade or 6th grade print that was called Hero. And he drew that. He'd heard the story in 1st grade of the little boy that stuck his thumb in the dike and saved all the villagers. And so he drew a picture of the hero, and then there was a mother pulling a child in a wagon, and it was his first use of words in his artwork, and it was rum, run. And nobody knows to this day what that meant, rum, run, unless his dad was a rum drinker.
He's a rum runner, man.
Yeah.
The bootlegger.
Running rum, man. Oh, he was born in 1928, so that's the middle of the Prohibition. So, I'm not saying anything, but his parents definitely remembered what it was like to be in Prohibition-era America. So he probably had some stories. I'm sure there's inspiration from there.
It was also, he lived during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And as a child, as times got worse and worse, the homes he lived in got worse. They moved constantly. They were a peripatetic family. They moved all the time. It was for economic reasons. Instead of stepping up in your home, they were stepping down. And before he was out of high school, he'd moved 21 times.
Now, did his adopted parents end up getting divorced? And
1938.
lived with his mother most of the time, right?
Right. Carmen's sister had killed their stepmother up in
South Bend.
South Bend. And she was testifying at the trial, and Earl, who's always looking for a better model in cars, found Sylvia, a better model in women, and kind of took off with her. So,
Well, and speaking of Richmond, throughout this entire journey, being the director at the Art Center, I made a relationship with Sean Dingworth, who is the director of the Richmond Art Museum. And I think that he had made contact with some of Bob's biological family there, and we had tried to kind of connect them, but that's a delicate situation, and I don't know whatever came of it because I just kind of turned it over, but interesting fact.
Yeah, it's a, yeah, 70, 80 years old.
Yeah.
Do you want to be
Haven't
connected
talked to
people?
them
Yeah.
and however many, yeah.
That could go either way. It's
I
like-
really hope that one day there's some people podcasting about me after I die.
You will have made it. I mean, you won't know it, but
didn't bury it.
remember he got that awesome backpack?
Yeah.
Episode 64,
And-
the backpack episode.
In 2018, Dakota went and got a backpack, and he loved that thing.
And made
He called
friends
it
with
the
a fellow
Cadillac.
podcaster.
Yeah. He
It
called
wasn't
it
the
the
Lincoln,
Cadillac.
it was the Cadillac.
Yeah, Cadillac of backpack.
GM guy.
So, I'm just trying to cycle us back to talking about Robert, Indiana. Whenever he was in high school, he got a scholarship to go to art school in Indianapolis,
Heron,
or was that post high school?
That was post-high school.
Okay.
He attended John Heron drawing classes. And, but anyway, back to Little Bob. He was sort of in charge of his life. He had parents that he said they were a little dull. So, I mean, he made his own scrapbook, and he has it well, he's dead now, but it's still,
had
it's in his Star of Hope. But he was a keeper of things. He didn't let go of anything. But he had a scrapbook, and it was made with Phillips 66 stationery, and then he glued his collages, made a collage out of each page. And it was, like the perfect world. He'd cut things out of magazines, furniture, things that he wished he had. Every time he moved house to a different house, the furniture moved with him. And that was for 18 years or whatever. The furniture, when his mother finally died in Columbus in 1949, that was the same furniture they had that he can remember.
Well, and I don't know if we said that. He moved 21 times within however many
17
years.
years.
Yeah, which is
That's a lot.
insane.
Yeah, that's crazy.
As an
No.
elementary school principal, that would be a nightmare. Kids
Right.
coming in and out, in and out, in and
Well,
out.
I mean, we still have people like that today.
But he was, when his father left with Sylvia, they moved into Indianapolis. They were living in Cumberland, which is just east
side.
of Indianapolis. And he was attending Lawrence Middle School. And he had heard about Arsenal Tech. He loved art, but there was no art in the country schools. Arsenal Tech had 12 artists on staff, 12. And it had an outstanding academic reputation. And he was an academician, so he wanted the best for himself. He had to make a choice: live with mother and not have that opportunity, or go with Dad and Sylvia, his dreaded stepmother, and persevere and go to a good high school. And he had to make that choice. And the stipulation was you don't see your mother, and he didn't for 2 years. But he excelled at Arsenal Tech. He was valedictorian of the class. He was involved in all kinds of activities. He had the best instructors you could get, probably in Indianapolis. And his watercolorist was Sarah Bard from Philadelphia. And she's the one that encouraged him when he got his scholarship to John Heron after high school to give that up and go into the military and try to be eligible for the GI Bill and get 4 or 5 years of free college. And that's what he did. He
Okay,
went
so
into the
the-
Air Force.
The military was to try to take advantage of the GI Bill.
It was an economic move.
Okay.
And it gave him
Wow.
gave him a better opportunity for a better education.
That's really interesting.
That was in 1946. It was the U.S. Army Air Corps then. 47 it became. the
Just
Air
after the war, he was able to.
Right.
Timing worked out that it was basically just barely into a time of peace before Korea.
Force. But he was an excellent painter. I don't know if you've seen any of his early works from high school.
His oil works, right? He painted
Oil,
a lot of
watercolors.
watercolor and oil.
Well, I think of it as the non-hard edge. The Robert Indiana we know is very straight, rigid, boxy
He
type.
was a realist, a figurative painter. And
He had a lot of different talents. He had, like, oh, sorry. A lot of different artists have their niche, right? So you do what you know you're good at and you stick to it. He kind of did that later on in his life, but he experimented a lot, and it seemed like he excelled at everything that he put his hands on, which is what I think makes him really interesting as a person, because he just seems like one of those people that whenever he picked something up to try it, he was like immediately good at it.
Right. He was in charge of his destiny, and he had it in his own hands. He knew, and he went through hardship to get there, but he did it.
Well, and I think, testament to that is when he lived on Coenty Slip in New York, and the art that he was making at that point were those herms, those wooden columns, and all of that art was based or used. He used things that he found there on the slip, and was just basically repurposing it.
Oh wow, cool! I didn't know that, but
Yeah.
those terms are really awesome.
Because I think it was an old sail making shop, or
Yeah, loft shop, sail shop, mariner.
And now we all just make stuff out of pallets.
he's
Same
basically
thing.
Chip Gaines.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He would have been awesome at Pinterest.
He would have.
back, after post high school, he did 3 years in the military. Hated every minute of it. His last tour was in Alaska. In 1949, he went to California. That's where Earl and Sylvia were living. Saw his dad for the last time, and Aaron and I were on the first floor talking to him about Mae West. And he said that he and his dad were driving up Observatory Hill behind this nice car, and all of a sudden a lady gets out, goes into the bushes to relieve herself. What was the actress Mae West? And that was a funny little story that he told.
And that's the only video that I really had, and it's on that blog and all
He was
website.
he
It's
was on a
interesting.
tear then. He was.
Oh yeah.
But it was also the last time he ever saw his father.
Wow.
In '49.
Well, I
Later
think-
he died in '65.
Did he do something with the newspaper when he was
Yeah.
stationed in Anchorage?
Yeah, when he was in Anchorage, he took over the Sourdough Sentinel newspaper, made it the biggest newspaper in Alaska, which probably wouldn't be too hard to do.
It's not like having the biggest podcast in Henry County, Indiana.
Yeah, it's the hardest to find podcast in Indiana.
Very secretive.
But it was in Alaska. He became ill and he had to go to the Aleutian Islands. I still think it was punishment. When he got off the plane, it was a terrible plane ride. It was terribly cold and wet and windy. And they gave him a fishing pole and said, "Get your lunch." And he wasn't too fond with the military at that point. But it wasn't too many weeks later that he got a call that his mother was dying, and he had to go back into the stateside and see his mother. And Aaron knows that story.
Yeah, well, and that's a good segue into, the background of his different pieces. We have the Eat sign at the Early Bird Diner there on Robert Indiana Parkway, and that's a reference to the last word that his mother said was "eat," and it's a paired, and I can't remember the proper art term for it.
Diptych.
Diptych, not a dipstick, but
A few of those out there on HM.
but it was eat, die. It's because that was the last thing she said. And that's, a lot of his art, almost in everything, you can see some kind of autobiographical reference. He has the Decade Auto Portraits, which is a series of geometric shapes, and there's words and references to things throughout his life. The eat, die, and Dick hit on the love painting here. That is the Phillips 66 colors with the green grass and the red and the blue, and so it was all autobiographical to some extent.
So he called himself a sign painter. It was interesting, and that
Painter of signs.
Yeah.
Yes. And the signs were sometimes covert, sometimes overt, sometimes whimsical, but a lot of hidden meaning in some of his signs. Just like this.
That's a podcast. We have to use words to describe it too.
Now this is a Decade Auto Portrait, 1965. It was done in '72, but it has.
It says Indiana, and it's a star, and it's got the number 5 in the center. It's red, white, and blue, and it says Indiana at the bottom. What's about spring?
It says spring on the side with an arrow
Chief,
pointing up. Chief, Washington, arrows
and
pointing
it's got
down.
arrows circling clockwise.
Yep. And there's
Let's get another one. This is fun.
Well,
Get
there's
another
a-
one.
These boys are good.
What do you see in the art?
What you have to see though, there's the hidden one in there as well.
It looks like
Right,
the Texaco
right.
star.
Yeah.
Okay, what they talked about,
Davey
the
Allison
Washington
Haviland
is,
reference here.
in 65, he made a trip to Washington, D.C. to see President Lyndon Johnson. Thus, the word chief, which was from an earlier art piece that he had done,
Okay.
the commander-in-chief. Spring with an upward arrow means I'm leaving Coenties Slip in 1965 and moving up to Spring Street on the Bowery, up north in Manhattan. And then Washington, I did Washington. So anyway.
All right. What's next? What's the next one you got? Describing art for 1,000, Alex.
Hey, I think you have the American Dream #1,
Yes, I do.
which is big piece that at the modern Museum of Art.
I was there last week, and I still
Museum
didn't
of
get to see
Modern
it.
Art, sorry. But there's a story about this one that we tried to ask him on our visit, and he said, "I don't recall," which he said a lot on that trip. But
See, I saw the.
So we have a 4 circles.
let Dakota do this.
Yeah.
one.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Dakota.
Go, Dakota.
So am I describing it or am I saying what I see?
You're describing what you
Ooh,
see.
a little both.
A little bit.
It's your show.
of
Do what you
both.
want.
I don't know. All right. So in the
How many circles, Dakota?
there's
Well, and that's a
See,
good
and
point.
now
And how are they laid out?
now we're getting deep because
You need to
there's
drink
technically
water, son.
there's technically 4 big circles, but there's other size circles inside
there are
of
circles
them.
inserted in
Right.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
and if you show the camera there, I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm gonna show
a
it.
lot of his pieces were laid out that way. And if you notice with the love, with L-O on top and the V and E.
Yeah, so he has a lot of work in quadrants.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so Dakota, what is this one called? This is the 6th American Dream or
The
the first
American
American
Dream.
Dream?
This
The
is
American Dream.
And then it became the American Dream #1.
Okay.
Yeah.
After he made
This
2.
is the
So
original.
you've got in the top left, you have your anarchy circle, the black and yellow, and it
Yep.
says 37, 40, 66, and 29.
Those are the roads that his father traveled to work.
Those are
US
Indiana
40.
roads.
And then we have the Aaron Dicken circle here,
The
which
take
is
all.
red, white, and blue, and it says "Take all."
And
Yep,
it looks
yep.
like a target
Cut your
almost.
grass.
It says-
And then the bottom left quadrant is numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all in stars, arranged
There's
in a star pattern.
There's a
And it says tilt. I assume that's for the tilted kilt that would come later.
No, that's they did a lot of road traveling. They were in the car probably more than their home, and lots of filling stations and diners had pinball machines. And obviously, tilt
Tilt,
for you
you
younger
bump the-
people.
bump the tilt, yeah.
If you moved it too much, it would tilt, and you would be done.
And you lose.
Huh.
And then the bottom right quadrant, down there in the southeast, is the American Dream, and it's another star with a circle radiating out of it, but then it's also
it's
framed in by a
star
square.
Yeah,
inside
exactly.
a square
Yeah.
Now here's
with a
my
circle.
question.
There's just so much going on.
This is a palimpsest. It's a painting over a painting. Do you know what's underneath this painting? I have a $100 bill here for anybody that can answer that
There's
question.
a sculpture underneath of this
No.
painting.
It's the love sculpture.
Is it a roadway? Is it traffic lanes?
No.
It's art. It can be whatever I want it to be, Dick.
It was this very simple.
$100, please.
2 or 4 white circles on a green ground with a kind of a
A wavy line.
wavy divided line in between. That was to commemorate an earthquake in Agadir, Morocco, killed 50,000 or 5,000 people.
I don't buy it.
But well, no, that was the obvious thing. But he also had a very good friend named Ellsworth Kelly, and they had just kind of split over the printed word.
Okay.
Ellsworth said, "If you can put words on your canvas, goodbye." And this was representing the split between the two of them. They were very close. Ellsworth was his mentor. Probably the most influential person in Robert Indiana's life was Ellsworth Kelly.
And he left
Second would
because
be
he
the first grade teacher.
because he wanted to put words.
Right. Ellsworth was hard edge, bright colors, right out of the tube. Bob Indiana was doing that, but he added words.
He uses a lot of colors. He uses a lot of letters, not words, but just letters in general. He's got big block letters in what he's doing, and it's pop art. He's like the founder, and he doesn't apparently didn't like the term,
Now-
but he was the frontline guy for pop art.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and Dick referenced the roads on that top left circle, and that's something that, blew my mind because everybody knows the love sculpture. And, even you can look at these auto portraits and all this stuff. But what really blew me away was the #1 Newcastle painting. Have you seen that one?
No.
It's
Did you bring art for us? to
I
look
did
at?
not. I about did, but
I
then
thought
I
you were
thought
bringing it.
I know it's referenced a lot on the blog too. But It's got Newcastle in that stencil block lettering in the bottom, and different color browns that are supposed to represent soil, like farming, and then a circle with the number 38 in it, which we've always really liked.
Yes. Yeah. And I think is there a Blue River reference in it?
Yeah, I think so.
Big Blue.
Yeah,
Big Blue,
Big
yeah.
Blue, right.
Yeah.
right.
So that was his
number
work as
one,
well?
obviously, because
This isn't
that's where he started.
This is actually his.
Right.
Okay.
He did that
So
in
what's your,
1969 is when he painted.
What's your blog, Aaron?
The blog is from Indiana with love.
You know, put that-
.wordpress.com. I mean, from the beginning of planning this whole journey to, I mean, even today, the connections I've made, like the guy that owns the Mecca floor and things like that, are referenced on that blog. So if you're not aware of the story or you just kind of want to relive it, because I just realized we're about 3 years out exactly from
Right.
the day that we left. I think we left tomorrow
Right.
in 2015. So that's interesting. Good
You gotta-
timing.
You got to realize too, the materials he had. First of all, he excelled at the Art Institute of Chicago. He won a scholarship, traveling scholarship to the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and also University of London for a few weeks, special study. Came home to New York. He had to borrow money from the embassy, U.S. Embassy, to get back to New York. His plans were to go back to Chicago. That was going to be his
That was
hometown.
home.
He got to New York, and there was no money to get him back to Chicago. So he stayed in New York, and he was dirt poor. He got a place for $7 a week, and he was literally, not literally, but he was starving.
Starving artist in
Yes,
New
he
York.
was.
Perfect
He wasn't
place.
an artist then. At that time, he was working with art, but poetry was probably his passion at that time. And it wasn't until 1956 that art won out.
I didn't even know that he did poetry.
Oh, it is beautiful poetry.
I'm gonna
And,
have to look it up now.
But he was a sellout and took the art money instead.
But when he got to New York, he had nothing, and he finally found a job at Friedrich's on West 57th Street, and they sold art supplies. And that's where he met Ellsworth Kelly. He came in one day and wanted a postcard, Matisse's Still Life with Oysters. And Bob, at that time, was in charge of the window displays. So he got him the postcard. They talked. They liked one another's company, and he said, there's a place on Coente Slip, southern Manhattan, old abandoned buildings, and Fred Mitchell is moving out of number 31. He's another artist. He said, are you interested? It was $28 a month, something like that, $25 a month.
4 times the money, man. That's,
And,
that's a big upgrade.
It was 35, but if you put the windows in yourself, replace the windows, 25 a month. Bob was a good carpenter. He did carpentry work for lots of artists on the slip. But anyway, he got that place because of his connection with Ellsworth Kelly. He also met James Rosenquist. I don't know if you know him or not, another great pop artist. He just died last year. And he met him, and he encouraged James to come down and join the colony. So they had a colony there, and they didn't socialize a lot, but they bounced things off of one another. And you're talking about Bob finding his style, his technique. He was a realist, and then with Ellsworth, he's going into hard edge, and
Symmetry, lines.
he
Vivid
went into
colors.
abstraction. Jack Youngerman was doing that, and he thought too much like Jack. He was going into circles. This guy had no money to buy oil, no money to buy paintbrushes, basically, or canvas. So what did he do? Like Aaron said, he looked for detritus, which is debris that's just raised buildings and all that debris. And by day, he'd go out and look, and here's a nice column, here's a nice beam.
Pick it up
And
at night.
he'd go out with other artists, and they'd see who could get it, and he'd cut it in half and drag it up three floors and begin working on it.
Wow, that's
But it
really
was out of necessity.
Yeah.
All those arms are beautiful, but it was out of necessity because he had no money for canvas, no money for paint. And it's an amazing story, and it's struggle, but he persevered, and in the end, he won.
Yeah.
So he worked in a number of dimensions, I guess, kind of like Remington did. He did sculptures and not just canvas work. He worked
Yeah.
in all different mediums.
And about everybody was doing assemblage and sculpture at that time. They were going to the dumpsters and getting thrown away materials and making art out of them, like Robert Rauschenberg. Guy was magnificent. But and Indiana did it, and Ellsworth Kelly did it, and Agnes Martin did it. All these people.
So he also dabbled in and doing like stamps. So like where you take cork board and kind of carve it out and make a print stamp out of it. And I think that was that's kind of I mean, whenever I was looking on the Robert Indiana website, it was like you're seeing all of it was all of his artwork was laid out by time, right? So it's laid out by when it was put out, and because I've dabbled in doing the carving and the stamps, I've done that, and some of that it's really, really difficult. Okay, it's like really hard, and it looked like he did a stint where he did like 5 pieces, and then that's whenever he started moving on to the print work, like the love sculpture. It was like in the early 60s he started doing that, which I thought was really interesting because obviously if you're carving, the lines are very important, keeping things clean. And then he moved on to that print style where everything was really clean. So
Most of the carving was done in 51, 52, early
Okay.
at Chicago.
all right,
A lot
yeah.
of that was done in Chicago.
So did he have one piece of art that just was a rocket ship to fame?
That one right there.
That was it.
The American Dream,
American Dream.
Alfred Barr, he was doing a 2-man show in the basement of a gallery, and they didn't sell a thing. And he had this American Dream painting, and Alfred Barr, who was with the Museum of Modern Art, went down and looked at it, and it just was mesmerizing. He didn't know why he liked it, but he bought it, and almost overnight, Robert Indiana was famous. I mean, he was the cutting edge of the pop artists. He was considered like one of the pop kings for a while, but then he divorced himself from that. He said, I'm a painter of signs, I'm hard edge, I'm not a pop artist. He didn't want to be associated with Andy Warhol. You saw his movie,
Yeah.
Eat.
Yep, Eat.
Most interesting movie.
So he did. Yeah. So those of you who don't know, Andy Warhol was he produced a film with Robert Indiana as the star. He was the star of the show.
The cat was the co-star.
Yeah, the cat was the co-star. Was the mushroom a third star? Yeah, I
Was
don't
it
know.
credited? So it's 45 minutes of him eating a
It's
mushroom.
45 minutes of him eating a portobello mushroom cap in silence. Yeah. Did you watch it? Have you watched it?
I actually did after you said that. I hadn't watched it up to that point, but I knew what it was about.
Uh-huh.
And if you want to test your comfort level, because I think
Oh,
watching
yeah.
somebody eat is one thing, but watching somebody eat while you're making eye contact and that's it
On film?
is
Yeah.
just like incredibly
It's
awkward.
so awkward. Like it.
But I
You're
mean,
sitting
that's
there watching
art's
on
all
your-
about the movement, and
Yeah.
I mean that's an emotion they're trying to evoke. You know,
You're watching it there on your computer, and it's just the most uncomfortable thing that
Everyone
you can
should watch
experience.
I'm Googling it right now. I didn't look at it earlier, so I'm just going to get creeped out.
At
on the
least
air.
try to make it 5 minutes.
When he went to
Yeah.
Andy's for the shoot at the factory, he thought he was going to eat like food. So he went to the grocery and got beautiful vegetables and fruits, and he was ready to eat for 45 minutes. And then Andy said, "Here, eat this mushroom." And he was very upset. By the way, the cat's name was Partici.
Oh, I knew you would know. As soon as I said the
Partici?
cat, I
Partici.
knew.
Huh.
Yeah.
He's the cat. The mushroom had no name. Well, portobello.
Portobello.
Oh.
I mean, I like portobello mushrooms too.
So this film is it's 39 minutes on YouTube, and it's lit from the side, Dakota. So he's got one side of his face is dark and one side is light, and he's just sitting there. I don't know if he's stoned or not, but he's sitting there holding a tiny little mushroom cap in his hand, and he's wearing a hat, and just ever so slowly looking at it, takes a bite, turns his head,
chewing
waiting.
so slowly
It's
while making eye contact with the camera.
That
I'm
was,
gonna.
That was 1964.
Did you guys bring a mushroom when you saw him? Say, hey, let's reenact this thing.
No, I did though.
We would get thrown out.
I did though take 2 cigars because
Yes.
I had seen pictures of him smoking cigars. One of them is by I think that was a sale repair building, or I guess it used to be the theater. We got to see the outside of it and could only imagine inside of it were his sculptures and just another workspace. But I had seen him smoking cigars. I should have thought at 85, 86 years old he wouldn't be smoking a cigar with me. But a boy can dream.
Yep.
You smoked it outside the hotel.
Yep. I think the night before we left, I think we did another walk around in the neighborhood because the island is such a. I mean,
It's So let's back up a little bit.
Brigadoon.
Okay.
Let's talk about, obviously, there's 2 points between now and then. I guess the love sculpture, which is like the most famous piece of art he has.
Right.
At some point he made that painting, and then it turned into a sculpture, which is all over the world now.
Right.
Yeah. But the
Different
original
languages.
at the
Yes,
IMA, and it's now been moved inside.
been
So
yeah.
really, the 2 love sculptures in Newcastle are the only love sculptures in Indiana that are outside that you can get to.
Really?
Interesting thought.
The
free.
6th
For free.
American Dream is more controversial.
Are you okay with
Right.
them
The, yellow and
moving
black.
sculptures like that?
The X.
Monuments?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's a little different context there, Jeremiah.
Just asking.
Yeah, the 6th American Dream is on the wall on the Arts Center.
Yeah,
that
Mr.
Steve
Ed
Weidert
Tarantino.
and Tarantino
Yeah.
painted. And I've already had a couple calls on that. You can see 666.
The
Oh,
number
yeah.
of the
And
beast.
if you're, oh yes.
Well, and
Been
there's
reading your Bible
USA
there.
Die.
Yes, USA Diamonds. But they were wondering what that was all about. And what that is all about is his father. Earl was the 6th child, born in the month of June, the 6th month. And when he left to go to California, he took Route 66. So there's all 6s. And along the way, there was a tonic called syrup, 666 cough syrup, very popular at the time. So all those are references to the time. And there's nothing diabolical. Ed and Steve were doing the right thing. There's nothing to scare this community.
So Dakota's holding it up on the screen. It is
It's
it is
gonna be very
questionable
difficult to see.
to people that don't know or haven't seen it. And it also says USAERR.
Error.
Error.
Yeah, he
What's
used,
why with America, Dick? Why
So
is it
it
an
also
error?
says USA Hug. Okay.
Okay, no, okay, let me, okay, there, how many, there are 4 words there, right?
Yeah, it's
Yep.
Err means sin, eat means survival, die means existence, and what's the other?
Hug.
Hug means love. Those are the 4 words that he repeats throughout his art. And those are,
It's pretty cool, actually.
and all those words, believe it or not, go back to his poverty on Cuente's slip in his little loft that he rented. He found these stencils, old brass shipping stencils. And he used those all of his life. And when he did the herms, he could only get like 3 or 4 letter words on those herms. And so he had to abbreviate or use short words. And
it's
so he-
typical in his work that where
right.
they're very
and so
short.
error became sin, and die became existence.
Yep. Yeah. I wondered that same thing whenever I first saw the painting out there. I'd never seen it before, and I saw it on the Art Association's building, and I was like, what the 666? I'm like,
Those artists.
I'm like singing Black Sabbath. The number
All right.
of the beast.
So
Come on, Ozzy.
those are the pieces of art, and we kind of alluded to it earlier in the show, but let's talk about it. Once again, it's Bouslog Liberty Podcast. Jeremiah Morrill, Dakota Davis, Dick Bouslog, and Aaron Dicken. And in 2015, you guys talked your way into an invitation to visit
Aaron did.
Vinyl Haven, Maine,
Right.
which is not an easy destination.
No, it's an hour ferry ride off of Rockland, Maine, which is a 2-hour drive north from Portland. But it was a nice little trip.
So it's planes, trains, and automobiles to get
Absolutely
to
it
even
is.
get to Maine from here. There's no direct
Planes.
flight from Indianapolis to Portland.
Planes, automobiles, and ferries. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
So you got an invitation, and I guess, did you talk to his people? Did he mail you a letter and say, yeah,
Well,
show up in June?
I mean, the whole thing was almost divine. People at the Art Association supported this goal, knew it was probably lofty, but Angie Dishman, who does a lot of the education at the Art Center, suggested writing a letter to the post office on Vinyl Haven. And come to find out now that we're there, it's literally across the alley from his house. So that's
Right
why
next
it
door.
worked. So I did that, and I just started sending letters. We never got anything back. And then one day, I had slipped to pick something off at pick something up at the post office, and I got it. It was a big envelope, and I looked at the return address, and it was the Star of Hope, and
which is the name of his residence.
which is the name of his residence, his studio, since the 70s. I walked across the street to the Courier and opened it up there because I knew that it was going to be a big deal, and called Dick, and I mean, it was just an incredible feeling. So after that, some time passed. I continued to write letters. And I guess I should say in that envelope was a letter that said something about his long ago hometown.
This is written by him or one of his people?
This is written by him with his signature at the bottom. And so I kicked myself because Mark Orr had given me a book to take up, and I thought, I'll take it. And if I get the chance, I mean, we were both expecting this, kind of grumpy old man. I thought I probably won't get a chance to get it signed. I did get it signed, and now I've told Mark, I said, I'm kind of kicking myself because I didn't get anything signed. But I have that letter, which I think is really special. There was a few photos in there, the original love sculpture, his house, the Star of Hope, and a picture that, I mean, it probably needs to be given to the Historical Society, or a print of it, of him sitting at the base of the Civil War Memorial on the courthouse lawn.
Yeah.
From what we can detect, that was about April 9th, 2002.
Right.
They were dedicating the Indiana obelisk from the State Museum. Frank O'Bannon, the governor at the time, dedicated.
Democrat governor.
Exactly. Frank.
The last elected Democrat governor Indiana's had. Still waiting on our next
Hard to top
libertarian.
him. It's hard to top him.
Great basketball player.
But designated that Robert Indiana Day. And so, we had heard a story in 2001, September 11th. He was in New York when the towers fell. I think was supposed to be in the towers, was he not, or had just left?
Yeah, he was staying in Chelsea, which is lower Manhattan, and he had an appointment. Well, he was going to fly to Paris for the Marilyn Monroe exhibit. He had several paintings that he was going to show and he had T-shirts designed and made, and they were on the 110th floor of the World Trade Center, and he was to pick them up that morning before he flew out. But he needed money. He wanted to pay cash, so he went to the bank to get cash, and while he was there, the attack occurred, and that just startled him. Yeah, he was shaken tremendously because he could have been up there,
You're right.
one of those names on the memorial. But he immediately, as soon as he could, went back to Vinyl Haven, painted a large painting called Afghanistan. He was extremely upset with the terrorism, and on the front of his Star of Hope, he had wooden sheets of plywood panels.
They were gray and black
Yeah,
with
to-
stars, the geometric.
And he repainted those with American flags. And then he went behind the house where he had a little shed, a little building, and a big column that said Zeus. And he changed that to 0 for ground zero. And he was terribly shaken and became very patriotic until 2003.
And then didn't fly
And
because
never
of that.
flew
And
after.
so that's why we figure if he's going to Indianapolis, he's taking 70 from the east, and that's why he ended up there.
He
But-
saw the sign and stopped.
Exactly. He said, "Hey, I know that place."
But we saw Afghanistan, the painting. It's never been shown.
Yeah, which is a nod to his civil rights movement paintings that kind of depict the South as.
Yeah, this one right here. You guys would like this.
So we have another one. It's a
Just as the anatomy of man, every nation
it's Alabama is the painting.
You
I
can
assume
read
that's
it.
the name of the art.
must have its hind
Hind
part.
And it's in
It's a-
pink, which is flesh color, or sort of flesh color. But Andy Warhol, I'm sure you remember those silk screens that he did of race riots. The dogs attacking the African Americans. Bob Indiana went one step. I mean, that wasn't controversial. That just showed what was happening. Robert Indiana
He's
was
truly pointing a finger at the state of Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
he was very upset.
Well, and Mississippi, and there's several in that.
He did 4. He's going to do all 13 of the Confederate states, but that takes a lot of time to paint. So he did Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, and he did those in '65. He was very conscious of what was going on down south, extremely upset. When he was living in Indianapolis and all those homes, he lived in integrated neighborhoods, so he had empathy for those people that were being persecuted.
You look at this artwork, and now you think this is something you would do in Photoshop really quickly, right?
Right.
You lay it out,
Well,
and it looks like quick sign. Like it looks like.
But that's where he's a painter of signs.
Right.
That's the lettering is very.
But it's very precise.
Right.
It's all his font, and that particular art looks like stencil work.
Which
Right.
those stencils, I think, weren't they
Those
found
are-
on the slip too?
Right.
Quinny slip.
Those are the brass stencils that
And he
used.
had some of that work in his house too, as well. But anyway, to circle back around, that picture was also in that envelope. Continued sending letters, and then we were closed on the art center's closed on Mondays. came in on Tuesday, and we had a voicemail, and it said, I can't even remember the name on it, but it was somebody who was an assistant of Robert Indiana's saying that, this is who we are. We're calling for Aaron Dicken, and they hung up. And I was like, why do we have to be closed Mondays? But caller ID
Gave you a phone number.
and I've still got the screenshot with the number blurred out, said Robert Clark, which I thought was just the most interesting thing because that was his, given name and the phone number. So I started calling in addition to my letters. And one afternoon, probably 4:45 before I left, I called, was ready to leave another voice message like I had before, and an old raspy voice answered. And I knew who it was, but I asked anyway, and had a really giddy 15-minute conversation on my end, probably not his. 15-minute conversation. We talked about his art. We talked about Newcastle. I was running for city council at the time. I'd mentioned that. It's just a really enjoyable conversation. I think I had asked him if he would be willing to come visit so that we could host him. And he said, I'm too old. I can't make that trip. I said, well, would you be open to us coming to you? And I imagine he thought, these guys from Newcastle, Indiana are not going to make the trip to Vinyl Haven. And he said, of course. And so, I remember being in a hotel room in Chicago on a little family getaway. And I was going back and forth. And I think I may have called you and said, hey, what are you doing on this week? I think I'm going to buy plane tickets. And I bought plane tickets. A lot of people contributed to that trip. A lot of individuals that were members of the Art Association or just community members who, believed in what we were doing. Organizations within the city. Because, it wasn't a cheap trip. The Art Association helped with it. But, monumental, I think, by any standard. So that's how it all came about, and we ended up going there. You want to dive into the actual?
Yeah, I want to hear you land on the island, and I'm picturing this is like I guess they have cars there. You can drive. You rent a car.
Cars,
you get a taxi, Uber. What's
I
that?
had a chauffeur.
That's
Young
right.
Aaron there.
That's right. I've never been more paranoid to drive in my life. So we landed in Portland, rented a car, drove up to Rockland, which is, where you get on the ferry. Rockland's got a great art museum, the Farnsworth Art Museum. They've got a lot of, obviously, Robert Indiana pieces. So if you are ever in that area, definitely check that out. And that's on the mainland. But we landed, drove to Rockland, grabbed a bite to eat, had my first taste of lobster, which was an unfortunate high standard from now on. That's the first time I had lobster. And then we got on the ferry, pulled on, and there was about 5 inches on each side of the mirrors, and we got on Vinyl Haven. And I had kind of randomly picked this hotel. I looked at a map. I was trying to figure out, okay, where's his house? And I picked a motel that I thought, okay, maybe it's close. It was about right across the street from his house. It's called the Tidewater Motel. They have a Facebook page. I'm going to plug a lot of these things. That's what I'm plugging.
Your Vinyl Haven
seafood, which I just found out now they no longer make etouffee, but we'll get there. So the Tidewater Motel, which is a little thing, we pull in, and it's like I kind of felt at home. We talked, we drove around the island and explored a little bit on our days off.
How many days was your trip? Were you on the island 2 days, 3 days?
We took a full week trip. So we traveled the first day and the last day, but the rest of the days we were on the island, which, looking back in hindsight, we could have done a 1 day on the island.
Stalker much? Yeah.
Well, but the thinking was in failing health in old age, I wanted to make sure that we had the chance, whenever, because I could see, okay, we're 1 day on the island. He feels bad that day. We blow it. We don't get to see him.
Or an invite to come back.
Right, and that's kind of what it turned into, but we didn't get the invite back. But everybody on the island was friendly, waved at each other, and when we pulled into the motel, and we were, just awestruck because it was right across the street from his house, the owner pulls in behind us, like blocking us in, and says, hey, there's a package in your room, and there's a message on the check-in desk from one of Indiana's guys. I thought, wow, we just got here. And it was Jamie who, was kind of our host that whole time on the island. And he came, I called him, and he said, listen, I've got to go over and make Bob dinner. I'll connect with you in the morning. And he came over that morning. We talked for a little bit. He had to run and do some errands, came back, and then took us over. We were there for 3 hours. I mean, interject whenever, and you guys interject
That's
with
unprecedented.
questions.
3 hours with Bob, Indiana. I mean, and we could have stayed longer, but
You could tell
we
he was
sensed it.
exhausted.
Yeah, he was. He actually walked up those steep stairs and down with us, and he didn't have to do that. Of course, he didn't have an elevator either, so I guess he did.
Yeah.
But he was so anxious to show us his home and his artwork, and he was such a gracious host. And you couldn't ask for a better guy. And you read all these stories about, and he probably is a prick. but we were, and again, Aaron brought gifts, and I think we may have been. I'm sure other friends have brought gifts to him, but most of the people are trying to get something from Bob, artwork. They want to deal his work, and we went.
You were just trying to rebuild a relationship
That's
from a
absolutely.
community.
And he read
That's the
that.
best way to say
I
it.
think he read that immediately. That these guys, and when we were done with the visit or the last day, Jamie, they said Bob really liked you guys, and I thought, that's a good testament.
Well, and he, I guess I cited the package, and he did too. I had gotten a pretty big box, and I had just kind of reached out to the Historical Society, anybody that I thought would have meaningful gifts of home to give to Bob. And so some of the things I put in there, I had a ceramic courthouse. I don't know if you've seen those at the Historical Society.
He
You plug
loved
them
that.
in, and it's really well done. He had Jamie plug it in instantly in the room we were in. I had Daryl Radford and Doug Major's book about Henry County, the historical book, a painting book about Indiana plein air painting, and then I tried to get as many love shirts that I could. I knew the Newcastle girls tennis team had a love shirt. Newcastle Main Street had the Where Love Was Born. Sean Kitchell came up with that. So we just tried to pack it all. Included in that was a proclamation, which was read, I think, that first night we were on the island. But we had a copy that was nicely printed. We had it framed, thanks to Frost Framing. And just, we gave that to him because I thought, I want to do something special for him. And I think he recognized that when we gave that framed piece to him. And at that time, I had a picture of Mayor York with the Robert Indiana Parkway sign that Kendra had sent to me that day before. So I was able to show him that and kind of tell him, what we were doing. I think that made a huge impression.
And he was supportive of this. He wasn't.
Yeah,
he wasn't.
Well, and that's the thing. I've had some people kind of pick at it a little bit because I understand from an outsider looking at it. You're just taking advantage of Robert Indiana. He knew from the very beginning what we were trying to do. We're not trying to make money on this. I think in the show notes it had said what had been done. And when I was the director, all I knew of was the 8-inch by 8-inch love painting on the mural in the courthouse. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's kind of a pictorial history of the county, and there's a love painting in
Steve Alford's bigger than that.
Right. And that's the only thing.
Is it where I looked up on eBay while we were talking, some Robert Indiana prints, and there's one from 1970 that he signed, and it's a love print, and it's on there right now for $24,000.
And that probably at least doubled
Yeah,
since
I've been checking.
last month.
I have several prints that I bought years ago. So
Now you can retire, Dick. Really retire.
Don't tell Donna.
well, back to knocking. We were the first. Waiting on someone to knock on his door, and Aaron did the knocking. But 5 years before that, my sister Lana and my wife Donna and I went to Farnsworth. We took the ferry to Bob's place, and my intention was to knock on his door and meet. I just thought you might be able to meet him. Well, you don't. He didn't open the door.
So you had been there before.
Yeah, we went to the library, talked to Valerie, who we met. And she's, hey, you're Aaron. She knew Aaron.
She knew just from the correspondence.
She knew he had to be Aaron because I looked like some old grubby guy coming off a lobster boat. But we knocked, and I found out later. I just found out a few weeks ago that Friends, there's a rock above the door.
Yeah, I read
And if you grab the rock and use the code, whatever,
He recognized.
at his age he wouldn't have come down, but in his
Right.
prime years he would have come down and opened the door because there was a friend at the door. But we knocked and went around the house, took gobs of pictures, and
Because it's really a neat property.
It's
it's a
beautiful.
historical house. Used to be the Oddfellows building on Vinyl Haven. It's still that top floor is still, he uses it as a ceremonial room. It's got like thrones in the corners, and just
the
really
little outlets in the floor for the.
probably
Yeah.
probably
those they're called baldacchinos, and they're like draped,
Right, right.
like a king would
over
sit
the
there.
thrones,
But it
right?
was for the ceremonies for the Oddfellows.
So we got in there, and I remember walking in and just being awestruck because it literally is a living museum, which is huge. That in his will, he wants to turn his house into a museum because that's what it was at that point. I mean, his art everywhere. So we're looking around, and we hear this, that same voice I heard on the phone up the stairs, asking who it was, and Jamie took us upstairs, and I had this huge box. He said, "Well, what's in the box?" And they said, "Well, let's go in this room." And he went through that box. We talked a little bit, and afterwards we talked and just picked everything apart the next 5 days. And said, that's probably his receiving room. And if things go well there, you move on. Really,
And it is.
And so
The purple room.
yeah. And that's where the Newcastle Henry County binder was. There's art all around. He had love Chuck Taylor's. He had love like a collection of.
What he calls the rip-offs.
Yeah, the unregistered uses of
But he would use it. He actually was interested in it.
He collected it.
Yeah,
Or
and
people sent it to him and said, "Here's another rip-off."
Right, and that was
Use
kind of
your
my.
love.
And
my
you gave him a
phrase.
box of it.
Exactly. Well, and I had mentioned that. I said,
Here's
I heard
some
you
more,
collect
Bob.
unregistered uses, and he kind of chuckled. But we went upstairs, and my mom, the Heinball family is notorious for making cookies, and they're from the Tri area. And so my mom made cookies and sent them up, and I said, "Mom, what's really?" We put them in the box, and we had them on the third floor with our coffee. So that's interesting. And talked about anything. I mean, I remember the one thing I remember is Dick asking him if the love painting came about if the Beatles song "All You Need Is Love" came about because of the painting, and he said, "I don't recall," and that was.
And then he said, "That's a myth."
Yeah.
And it's not, because I heard John Lennon in an interview say he didn't know the artist, but he said the love sculpture or the love LOVE inspired me to write "All You Need Is Love." But
So
again,
he was the inspiration for John Lennon.
yes.
Okay.
But Bob said no.
But he downplayed it.
Right.
But again, and that also that love got bigger than Robert, Indiana. Everyone in the world knew love, and to this day, it's the Mona Lisa and love are right up there. Almost everyone in the world, oh yeah, I've seen that, or I know that.
Yeah, yeah.
But they don't know who the guy was. He even started having his picture taken on top of his sculptures, so people would see, look at me. I'm, sort of like Horton Hears a Who. I'm here. But it was, and then of course he didn't copyright it, the image, and then people started making Chuck Taylors and all that stuff. And
So
And that stamp,
you've got a U.S. postage stamp, which is what the mug you're drinking
Right,
out of.
and it was-
your clear liquid that you've got in there. It's
my coffee.
an 8-cent American postage stamp.
Right, and 330 million
yeah.
copies of that stamp made,
you had to,
and
had to
he
print it twice.
got a check for $1,000 and was called a sellout because of how popular it got. And so that's kind of where you get this recluse that's kind of reserved from everybody and doesn't want anything to do with anybody because, it's kind of like local politicians sometimes. On one hand,
You're on the take. We know it.
Speak for yourself. No one hates me. Shoot.
he is doing, trying to do something great, and then is getting scammed for it, and then is being called a sellout.
Well, none of his work has his name written on the front.
It's not there.
It's not. He doesn't want to ruin that image. He wants that image to be pristine.
In
And when they made the poster for the Stable Gallery, the show in '66, they had the Union bug on it, but down below. But they didn't have, and it wasn't copyrighted properly. And boom, it just took off. And people started saying, "Ooh, that's cool. Let's put it on this. Put it on coffee mugs and all that stuff."
yeah.
And
All
poor
right.
Bob was ostracized by the art community, and that helped lead to his moving to Vinyl Haven.
So, speaking of local politicians, before we get to final thoughts, I want to know.
I'm not a
I want to
politician.
know.
That's the politician.
I
right
want to
there.
know. Well, I want to know from Aaron what's going on in the county council, and I want to know from Dick what's going on in the city council.
Are you the other way around?
Wow, that's
Yeah.
going to be
Or
interesting.
you want the other guy's opinion?
Yeah, that was purposeful. I wasn't misspeaking. I want to
Well,
know.
the most exciting thing right now is we're getting ready for budget. That's always the most exciting time of the year. But we do have the council with the wind turbines. That's a big emotional issue right now. Obviously, it's kind of split. You saw what the elections did.
Yeah.
It obviously had an impact.
Violently.
Yes, it did. But The only role we have in that would be if we do abatement. And we have done abatement
Are you
on...
sure? Because everybody running seems to think that the council has a lot more to do with.
Yeah.
No. Abatement is our only, the only, everything else is done by the commissioners. Abatement is our tool, if we
Right.
want to use it or not. We've used it on the southern projects, and I'm kind of regretful that we did.
The split has been amazing to me. It's been so fascinating to watch from the outside, watching the Republican Party split in two, just like the Titanic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're sinking, man, going down. I mean, you have one council candidate who is running under the GOP ticket, who is calling he's calling GOP commissioners evil. You know, like it's insane. Like it's
Now I've got
so
I've got
interesting.
visions of Todd Hyde saying, "Don't let go."
Yeah.
I'll never let go.
I'll never let go.
No,
And then is that Clay Morgan who is
He's holding on to
Clay's-
Clay.
yeah.
Clay's
Let go,
freezing
Clay.
to death and just going
Yeah.
underwater.
He's eventually Clay's just gonna sink off and he's gonna come to my side.
Kind of
Get
smell
another-
that on the
play-
last
play in
episode,
another
or on
movie.
his
Yeah.
episode.
no, that's been a little discouraging. You know, when all this started 7 years ago, whatever, I remember Nate and I went up north and we stood under a turbine. And at that time, it seemed like, wow, that's cool, you know. And the longer we went, the more information you got, the more you looked at what was happening in the community, you start having second thoughts. And I'm not sure we did the right thing down south. I don't know what's going to happen. I know up north it doesn't have council support, but it doesn't necessarily need it. If they don't want abatement, they can move on.
Well, now the South abatement has expired, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be pursued again. So
I know that there's different opinions on whether or not these can be developed without abatements, but to this point, there's not been a single wind project without a county abatement in the state of Indiana. So
It says something.
and I don't see. I've done a whip count. I can't find more than 2 votes, if that, on the council to put an abatement in.
No, and I'm not against wind.
Right.
When I fly into Harlingen, Texas, and as you're going into the airport, you look out your west window, and it's just miles and miles of turbines, but it's on huge ranches, and every one of those ranchers are profiting, and they're happy to have the turbines, and they're not affecting their
if
neighbors.
you just drive through if you're going to Chicago, you drive on
White County.
Yeah, you drive through White County.
Benton
and
County.
You
And
just
it's
see,
sparsely populated,
You
too.
see bald eagles getting killed. You see the wings flying off. You see ice sheets that are
Is that a
flying
reference
off
to
of them.
Aaron?
Say, Dick, you better be careful.
sitting-
You're not gonna get reelected.
Yeah, he has a re-election to worry about, right?
I don't.
No, I'm just kidding.
I think
Yeah.
you have to
You
follow
still
in
got-
your family's footsteps.
You still got an opportunity to
that?
run for
You
sheriff,
need to run for mayor.
mayor,
Oh, sure, yeah. I like live in the county.
state
Yeah.
representative. That doesn't stop some
Well,
people.
I want to know why he's not
I
following.
can see the city from my front door. I think I can run.
I want to know why Dick. Why aren't you following in the footsteps of your great grandfather and becoming chief of police, so you can pick up the Catherine investigation where he left off?
You're blowing his cover.
Actually, I know where she is. I'm just not.
Oh no! Oh, somebody call Candace and
A
Eldon.
couple weeks late with that information.
All right, Aaron, what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, a few things that I want to cite before I jump into city stuff that I've kind of tried to think about. I need to give respect to Stephen Vitito, Newcastle Main Street, and Carrie Barrett because they've been instrumental in the whole Robert, Indiana legacy and the culture and district. The Mecca floor, which we didn't necessarily get to, but is an incredible piece of work. There's a 30 for 30 ESPN shorts. If you haven't seen that, watch it. I've connected with Ben Kohler, who owns the floor now. He found it in a reclaimed wood warehouse.
It's the Milwaukee Bucks basketball court from the 70s
And they
or 80s.
actually played on a replica this season. My boyhood neighbor, Adam Hamby, made this court, and it's he's got a Facebook page and does all kinds of things like that. It's Land of Many Basketball Courts.
Yep,
if you
your
wanna
brother.
Yeah,
he
I think he
linked to it.
tagged that. And actually, little known fact, the double Newcastle connection, the opening night of the floor, I was told there was a damper because Kent Benson got sucker punched by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So interesting thought there. And then to circle back to what Robert Indiana thought, it means a lot to me to know that he knew of everything that we had done to this point and we were planning to do before he passed. Something he said while we were up there was, I asked him what he thought of all this and all the plans, and he said, "It's a little tardy." And I mean, that's true.
It's not your fault. You're just barely rising to power, Aaron.
Exactly.
It's all Dick's fault for being so slow.
And Jamie was an incredible host on the island. Jamie's the one that had run Vinyl Haven Seafood, and I think he's washing tonight. I mean, he was an incredible host there and really made sure that we were treated right.
He made us feel like islanders.
For
He gave
sure.
us a personal tour of the island. We went into his home and ate in his home. He's a wonderful person, a talented artist.
Now, do you know where their logo came from? Because
He
it looks
worked-
pretty familiar.
Well, he worked with Robert or for Robert in the 70s, and he had stopped working with him, and then started taking care of him a little bit, and so they worked together on this. Jamie had the idea, Robert helped, and so I mean, you can see the slanted O's, the fonts.
You got the circle, the stars,
and
I mean,
this pot. Can you remember what the family is?
It was
Show
one
the-
of
show the
Jamie's,
camera your-
Civil
It's a
War. It's
family
one of
heirloom.
Jamie's Civil War ancestors. It's in the Vinyl Haven Historical
Society, yeah,
Society
right.
Museum,
Right.
and it wasn't there because the museum I think it was at
Traveling
Jamie's
around, I
house
think.
or
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah. So I mean, just a really neat connection there, and he was great to us. But city updates, 1400 Plaza. I'm hoping to
The Pit.
ask the Pit. You fell in it.
I'm gonna start camping there.
14th Street is open. 14th Street is open, and I think if you drive by there, I see a footprint for where they're going to build that bathroom. So hopefully we'll start seeing progress, but I'm hoping to nail down a timeline Monday night. Trojan Woods, there was an article in the paper about the last Parks Board meeting. There wasn't really anything changed in that, which, I think people were looking for a bicycle ban or, prohibit bicycling through there.
If a smoking ban is fine, why not a bicycle ban, Aaron?
I know. Well, and there's things there that play into that, and we'll see what happens as it develops. But I'm excited to see the woods, get even more cleaned up. Hopefully adding trailheads and mile markers throughout there. Because if you haven't walked through there, I suggest you do. It's a beautiful,
That's
beautiful
awesome.
place.
Will it still be a nature preserve?
Well, and that's the one thing I've tried to nail down is, has it lawfully been declared a nature preserve? I know the high school used it for some time, and from what I've gathered from some former science teachers, that they don't use that because they're busy testing.
Right.
But, I mean, I think they're even, regardless of if it changes from what it is now or not, I think there were definitely a majority of it will remain the way it is. But that's a Parks Board issue, and interested to see what happens, but I'm just excited.
They'll do
for
the
the
right
cleanup.
thing.
For sure.
After listening to your story about how you guys got to go up to Maine and meet Robert Indiana, you're pretty persistent. I'm pretty worried about our chances of having smoker freedom here in the city.
Well,
It doesn't seem like you give up without a fight.
It's kind of, I told Eldon Pitts yesterday that I'm doing some catch up with the episodes, but on my way to Shelbyville the other day, I listened to Clay Morgan's episode, and he said, well, in Dakota's ideal world, everyone would care for their lawns, and you wouldn't have to worry about 8-inch to 12-inch grass. And I think that's what it all comes down to, and I enjoy our friendships because you guys kind of make me look at things a little differently, and I weigh that for sure. White Estates, I think we've got an ordinance amendment coming up on Monday for those surcharges there. And there have been public meetings.
Well,
have you attended any?
I
public
attended
meetings?
one. Yeah, that was one of my 5 meetings in 2 days.
So
yes,
I mean,
did attend one.
That's moving forward. It's a messy. The thing I've been thinking about is, in regards to infrastructure especially, there's a lot of things that we are having to make movements on here within the last 3 to 5 years based on things being neglected historically. And so that's not the sexy side of government, because I like the sculptures and the things that are going to draw visitors in. But I mean, lately I've been thinking, okay, we need to start thinking about maintenance. As far as
basic
roads,
infrastructure is the number one role of government.
Parks. I mean, the parks are a part of that, a role too. Just maintaining what we have, cleaning it up for everybody here, because then that next step will be bringing people in.
Has the state done anything about, I know the mayor was displeased with the work on Broad Street.
Right.
Is there any action?
Well, the one on my drive-through with the mayor, he did point out that drain towards Road 3, just east of Road 3, and you could see underneath the road. And I suspect that's how, if you remember when they started this project and they were tapping 38, it dropped 3 feet there between like 8th Street and 11th Street. Wow. I'd imagine that's how that happens. It has since been repaired, and I think, like you had said on one of the episodes, there will be a final walkthrough, and I'm, based on what I've seen from Greg, yeah, he'll make sure that it's, right in the way. The main thing that I'm concerned about is those crosswalks, the corners, especially the one right outside of what used to be Main Source Bank. I walked over that way during the cruise in and was lost. I didn't even know how to get up on the curb.
Talking about the iron work?
Well, those are additional. I assume those are custom. Those are custom city works.
I'm guessing that's the case.
Those are renegade. The same people that couldn't pull barriers down off 14th Street for 3 years magically have erected barriers for sidewalks.
Were they produced by the Art Association of Henry County?
What's that?
Were they produced by the Art Association of Henry County?
I do not think that those are properly licensed for that. But we'll see. I'm hoping that those aren't permanent. But then I
think a 5-gallon bucket's a good look on our main street.
Might be. You could move it. You could move it over to 14th Street.
Reusable.
Remove the barrier.
I tried to contact the IT contractor to see where we were at with the chamber updates. I know last conversation I had with them, we talked about, I sent him actually to the Boss Hog of Liberty YouTube page and Facebook and said, listen, the ease of use that I see these guys utilizing.
These idiots can do it. We certainly can.
Basically. No, I'm just kidding. And we've got our vantage point where we want the camera. And the audio, I think the skeleton is there. Hopefully it works properly. So we're close. I'm hoping that it won't be, another few months, but it's going to be a little bit more time left. But we are working towards that way. So.
I can't wait until you guys get it put up and you can start live streaming it, and then I can just share it from the Boss Hog page, and people are like, "Wow, this guy makes it to every single meeting.
He's in 2 meetings at the same time." But
if I had $1 million, that's what I'd do. 2 meetings at the same time.
I appreciate what you guys do here with your platform. I mean, it's obviously made waves in our community and has put information out there and transparency out there, which is always needed. And definitely appreciate you having Dick and I on to kind of help educate and grow the legacy of Robert, Indiana, which is what this is all about. It's not about us. It's not about Newcastle even. It's just about the legacy that started here.
Very cool. I know I looked at the at Main and Broad, and I found the original INDOT drawings and looked at what's out there. And to my eye, I'm a bridge guy, so I don't roadway and sidewalks aren't my thing. I don't know if there's been an additional drawing since then.
Does it look like a gradual grade on the whole?
But it doesn't match.
Right.
And I don't know. I hate to throw stones at a project when I'm not on it. But
Maybe we could get you on it.
Yeah, that's what I need. One more thing.
6 meetings in 2 days.
6 meetings in 2 days and getting married in 3 weeks. But it is, it doesn't match the drawing that I saw.
Right.
So at least that one of them. So I don't know.
Well, and
I don't know what the explanation is.
And I've reached out to Representative Saunders, and I know the mayor has met with him when Greg was over at the State House to meet with the governor and Lysing and the Rushville people. So they're at least aware, which is
a little bit of overkill. You're calling the governor in over a sidewalk.
I know. Well, I mean, he had a guy that face planted it.
Listen here, Holcomb. You're gonna get this fixed.
Oh, Bannon wouldn't have let this happen.
Exactly.
I'll tell you that.
Frank would have had that fixed in a heartbeat.
With somebody else's money.
Low blow.
Oh boy.
Tax money.
Anyway, he suspended the gas tax. He wouldn't have had any money for that. Anything else, Aaron? I guess this is probably a good time for final thoughts, or was that it?
Oh, well, I thought that's what we were
doing.
We
hadn't officially got there. You kind of shot your wad. You got anything else?
I thought Dakota had said final thoughts, so that's why I was trying to rush
said before we get to final thoughts.
Oh, gotcha.
You did okay because we would have started with you to begin with, so it's all right.
Is that it?
I mean, that's it.
Any more kids on the way?
It's no,
Congratulations.
thank you. Cece is definitely keeping us awake, and God bless my wife. I don't know, watching your wife give birth and be a mother. I mean, there's a whole new respect for women. I don't know how she does it. I couldn't do it. So yeah, and she's the one that like tonight. I'm at a lot of meetings a lot too, and I hate that because I'm away from them, and hopefully Elle and Braylon and Cece are all watching, or at least Cece's asleep. But no more kids. We've ingrained her with the boss hog of liberty because I was watching the election results in the delivery room.
Hey,
I can't
That's what
believe.
Ethel Kennedy said that too.
yeah, you were watching it in the room, and then I was messaging you about some things that were going on, and you were texting me back from the delivery room. So
I mean, at that point, it wasn't necessarily delivery. It was just
Sitting around waiting.
I couldn't do anything. So,
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
yeah, thank you.
You didn't bring any gifts for us this time. Last time you brought
No, I
a
thought
screenshot
about it,
from the
but-
internet, but I got no gift.
With-
You can leave behind some of the Robert, Indiana.
I thought about it, but with the lawsuits that are flying around, I didn't want to be called. So maybe after all that settles down.
So that is a thing. We were reading there. The FBI came in after his passing, and we don't know where that's going. But there's been some talk of lawsuits and what's going to happen to his estate, and there's more to be written there.
And
but there's something.
That's what's so hard, and I think it's hard to tell because he was such an interesting individual. I don't think it's even fair for his friends to know what he was thinking, honestly, that late in his life. Because we could tell how failing his health was, and like I said, I mean, Jamie it seemed like a son to him, and that's what apparently he worked for him in the late 80s and 90s, and doesn't want me to make him look old and say that he worked for him in the 70s. But I don't know much about the art fraud. I know that there's a suit about senior neglect or abuse, which I don't necessarily. I mean, I'm not a lawyer.
No
and
way.
We're not friends necessarily, but I don't get that vibe.
I think Bob wanted his privacy. He didn't want to
Sure.
greet people, and he was in a failing state, and he had a lot of pride. I don't think he wanted to meet all those people. But this Morgan Art Foundation is Swiss, and we were
Right.
alerted to that. And they're very secretive, and I just think it's a big, powerful corporation. They're going to try to go after Jamie and Michael. And I think Jamie's an innocent player in this. He's doing what he was asked to do.
Yeah, as
And-
family.
And my gut
basically.
feeling is Jamie he's the victim in all this. And I really have empathy for him. And I hope he prevails in this because he's well respected on the island, he and his wife.
For sure.
He was a gracious host for us.
Hate to see that kind of thing turn ugly.
Yeah,
Oh, for sure. Well,
But you're
especially
talking
a
about
small community
But you're
like
talking
that.
about big money who have all
Right.
their assets,
Greed.
all their money's in the Bahamas, and all they want. They not only want the rights to love, but all of his artwork from 1960 to 2004. That's basically all of his
basically
artwork.
all of it.
And
Yeah.
they want to license that, and then they're going to make millions and millions off that. Jamie just wants to get the museum going, and
Well, and the way I see it is they're wanting to get that for their own sake.
right.
And Jamie, it's almost like a Robin Hood thing. He wants to get that to give to the people. I mean,
That's
the
what Bob-
conversations
that's what
we
Bob
have
wanted.
is about
Jamie-
growing the
he's
legacy.
fulfilling
and-
his wishes.
Right. Because, I mean, like Dick said, Bob knew that he wasn't well known. And so that's kind of been my mission through all of this is to spread the love and
That's
kind
catchy.
of grow his we should make a sculpture.
Maybe a T-shirt.
And grow his legacy, and that's all we're trying to do. And I think because of you hosting us tonight for this discussion, you're going to have a lot more fans on Vinyl Haven, Maine.
That's exciting. Any final thoughts, Dick?
No, I appreciate what you guys do. I know there's a lady at Ball State in the art department listening right now. Hey, we have a new listener from Montreal.
Chirp, chirp. Well, this has been fun. Dakota,
This has been a good episode.
final thoughts.
I guess my final thoughts, of course, is a big, giant thank you to the people who pay us on Patreon. It's always awesome.
The lifeblood of the show.
Yep, definitely. That's how we are supported. That's how we get our money to put this show on every week, and that's eventually how we're going to have enough money to get moved to a professional studio. So in downtown Newcastle. So I'm excited for the future. I had a lot of fun on this one.
Can you imagine how nice it'd be that we could actually operate the door and go
Yep.
out and back
Yep.
in during a show?
I'm so excited because I have to pee so bad right now.
You may not be the only one.
I'm a trained horse show announcer. My job is to sit there and talk for 5 or 6 hours, so I'm good.
Yeah,
I
well,
could go 2 more hours.
so I guess my real final thought is I think that I'm going to test out the Cadillac backpacks and go to the city council meeting on Monday
See you there.
and check it out. And look for me in my camo backpack. But I don't know if you'll be able to see me with that digital camo.
You probably won't be. Dakota, didn't you bring your equipment?
Yeah.
And I can testify to the fact that you are literally a celebrity when you would go there.
He
You're
holds
usually-
court every time.
You usually are the first one there, and everybody comes in. Oh, hey Dakota, and they want to shake your
they're
hand,
talking to me.
see what's next.
My wife's hairdresser, Trisha, is married to, I think, Mark Coger's son, some relation to Mark.
Oh yeah.
And
Trish Foster.
Yep.
yeah,
Used to
yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Used to be
Coger now.
Foster. It's Coger now. But she heard a rumor and asked my wife, is Dakota running against Mark in 2019? And I said, I don't know.
That rumor was started by
Dakota Davis.
Dakota Davis on the other Aaron Dicken episode.
That's correct.
It's a self-planted rumor. I don't know where that came from. It's fake news.
Who said that? Who
Liars.
said that?
They're all liars.
Well, those are my
I
final
do
thoughts.
love that it comes full circle back to you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I got a handful of
Purpose.
things. I got all kinds of notes over here I want to work through real quick.
Uh-oh.
All right. So
Gosh, look at all that.
I got all kinds of stuff. I got engaged in front of the Love Sculpture back in
you did.
December.
It's true.
So and
I
then,
saw the pictures.
Stephen, you can say his last name for me. It's very Italian.
Vidito.
Stephen Veneto. He was the sculptor, or not the sculptor, but
Yeah.
his
He
group
and
at
his
the
class.
school.
Yeah,
they,
it's
they,
a class
they built
of
them.
students.
So when you guys did the installation, that's when he got engaged, or where he got
Right, right.
engaged on the spot as it was installed. So he was number one, and then he got married.
Which is
I guess
rightfully so.
last week or 2 weeks ago.
Last weekend.
Stephen Vidito's gonna have a headstone like from the one from SpongeBob, the Smitty Wurgenberger. He was number one.
So Sarah and I, the lovely Sarah Potter and I, got engaged down there back in December, and then we're getting married on July 7th, 7/7. And to kind of carry it over, we had the love sculpture
Yeah,
will
that's
be our
right.
cake topper. So at the wedding, so that'll be our little tie.
Well, my hope someday is to figure out a way to collect all the pictures that were taken in front of the love sculpture. I think I told you guys that.
Yeah.
And create a love collage like you do with the little photos. I think that would be really
Yeah, and make it look like one big love print.
It's the
That was
number one
sweet.
place to get engaged in Henry County. That's what I heard.
Yeah. Well, and we had a couple here recently from Arizona. They got their picture in front of both love sculptures because they're traveling around the world. Christy and her wife, her husband, and they're just doing it everywhere. And so they came to Newcastle because they knew it was here.
That's very cool.
That's cool.
I want to give a shout out. One of the meetings I went to this week, and I served, Dick, I served on the Memorial Park Board for a couple of years. And raising money for that park, the financial constraints of county parks and the struggle we have. And for a number of reasons, just from the county side, funding projects and maintenance in there is a nightmare. So we realized that a year ago, and out of the Hope Initiative and some work that was done with that group and a number of other volunteers, the Friends of Memorial Park were created. They celebrated their 1-year anniversary, and they had a big event out at the park on Tuesday night. And I got to go to that birthday party, and they collected bottle caps. I know the city of Newcastle is doing that now, where there's bottle caps out there
Yeah,
years.
finished, I think.
And they're looking for
I thought
kids
it
to help
was-
sort.
Thought it was until the 1st of July.
I thought it was June.
Oh, was it?
Anyway,
Dang it! I have a whole
Brenda
trash
Grider,
bag.
Brenda
full.
Grider will probably comment.
you can send them. You can send them with Aaron.
Well, they're
We'll
at
push 'em
work.
through. We'll
We've
push
been
'em
collecting them
through.
at work.
So anyway, the Friends of Memorial Park, in the last year, they've been raising money and worked on these projects. They've been awarded grants. They've replaced, in the last year, every single volleyball net, basketball net, and tennis court net in Memorial Park is new and replaced thanks to that group. They had 9 benches made, 9 new park benches, 1 new ADA-compliant table. They have ADA playground equipment ordered and brand new swings. So new equipment for the swings.
Movers
in
and
a year,
shakers.
man.
Movers and shakers.
So it's when we couldn't, we had to use tree money to put, we had to use our tree money in to put in a new roof on our shelter house. We had to use tree money to put in. We made the news. We made the news like 3 times in the time I was on the park board. We made the news over an algae scare. where we had
Right.
fish that were nearly dying. We almost had the biggest fish kill in Henry County history. We had fire trucks out there running water, and the Nissan's lagoon pump running water, trying to aerate water. So we've got fountains in all of the ponds again. Finally out there, we'd used tree money for that. So we were scraping and trying to find anywhere we could to find something to keep that park going. Just really thankful for that group, encouraging membership for Friends of Memorial Park, and they're doing events all throughout the year. But it's a 501c3 organization, not a truly tied to the park, not a government entity, but an individual booster organization. So I wanted to celebrate them.
Well, and that plan that was presented at City Council was so impressive of the Henry County Expo. I'm really excited to see what happens.
And
with
that's
that.
another separate group where the Henry County Expo group exists, and they're going to build about a 70 to 75,000 square foot facility that's going to be home to Henry County 4-H, home to Purdue Extension, and all kinds of other
endless
youth and community events where you can have a 500-person banquet, you can have a livestock show, you could have a rodeo, you could have a circus, you could have wrestling, just an incredible number of things. And over the next couple of months, you're going to see that take a very high profile, and there's going to be some fundraising. There's a little bit of county money that was put into it for seed money. But from this point on, there's about $3 or $4 million that's going to be raised privately, and from the visibility I've had in it and being on the expo board, I think the county's going to support it, and it's going to happen. So within a year, that's the goal. July of 2019, we're expecting to have a county fair out there and then be off and running. I know they've got at least 3 or 4 events booked already for using the facility.
And I see that's the main concern is, can we support it? I mean, it's all about the marketing, because I think that a facility like that could house just about anything. It's all about marketing.
You could do anything with that building, and there's nothing else like it. It's not really like it competes with other facilities in the area. It's well beyond. I want to have a libertarian convention there. Probably the 2020 state libertarian convention. I want to host it out there, and maybe a Democrat convention if you'll, or at least a regional. I don't know. We can get you people there. We'll happily let the Democrats.
Maybe a joint convention.
Sure. It's Dick and his grass over there. Last one. Next week we're gonna have Kreider's Barbecue Bash. Bash Kreider's gonna be on the show.
Awesome.
He's opening up a new business, so we're gonna have. Hopefully, he brings us some samples.
Yeah,
But we're gonna hang out with him, and we'll talk. It'll be another fun meandering episode.
Yeah, I have
do it
I have
outside.
another final thought to get in there.
That's all right. We're only 2 hours in.
Yeah, I have one more final thought. This one's the most important that we've had,
Yes, sir.
and it is that the Libertarian Party of Henry County is having a meeting on the 24th of June at Montgomery Steakhouse at 1 p.m., and we will be closing our convention. So if you want to be put up for office, if you've been kicking around running for office in Henry County, then you need to talk to me so that we can get the nomination done and put you on the ballot whenever we close out the convention.
There you go.
So-
One last chance.
Rumors today.
There are rumors of
Yeah,
new
there's
candidates.
some
Is it
rumors.
true? You're the guy who should know, I guess.
I'm not
Do you
gonna.
have a new candidate?
I'm not gonna speak on any rumors. I got myself in trouble while talking about Mark Koger. I don't want to get anybody else in trouble either.
Nothing's official till they're on the ballot, but I think there are discussions about possible new candidates.
The talking is out.
It's out
It
there.
is there.
And nobody knows. That's what's impressive.
Yes.
I heard Dick Bouslog was running for state rep.
Oh, yeah.
Mayor.
As a
Mayor.
libertarian.
Yeah.
The Bouslog's
put
run
me
for
on the
mayor
ballot,
and
yeah.
chief.
We'll see y'all next week.
Mayor and police chief.
Thank you, guys.
Oh.